Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's Awaken Your Magic Live. And I'm going to be talking today about the elements. Have you ever heard about the elements, wanted to use them in your practice, but don't really know how or even what they are? Well, that is what we're going to talk about today. And I am also going to put in the comments a link to my Skool community. And if you like to have conversations about magical things, then please join me over there. It's free to join, and you can jump in and we can talk about magic. Pretty soon here, I'm going to have Soph Newman joining me. She's a couple minutes late, but that's okay. We knew that was going to happen. So let me start to talk about the 5 elements. First of all, what are the elements? They are earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. Now, those elements are obviously, the first 4 are obviously the building blocks of the world around us. And oftentimes you will see people have assigned correspondences to those different elements. Now, the elements are important to us because they are everything that we use to create all the things that we create to survive. And so we do tend to tell a lot of stories about them. But the correspondences, and there's a million of these online, you can see them and you can figure out what some of the standard meanings are. But I think that there are a lot of different cultures that assign different meanings. But the other thing, they're important to us for more reasons than just we need them to live, right? They're also a way to notice, a way to explain the world around us. And I think of the elements as sort of a language. And like, just try and imagine trying to describe music without words like rhythm, harmony, melody. You could do it, but it would be a lot harder. And I think the elements give us a vocabulary for talking about experiences and feelings that are otherwise difficult to articulate. And so, if you say like, oh, I feel heavy, I feel stuck, but I also feel safe. The element earth can really describe that feeling really well. Or you might be thinking to yourself, oh, my thoughts are so scattered and I can't find my balance. Well, you might use the element air for symbolism for that. So yeah, it's symbolism for noticing what's around you and what's inside you. So obviously the correspondence are not absolute truths because we know different traditions. They assign the elements to different directions. They some traditions include spirit. Hey,
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
No, thank you for inviting me. What are we talking about today?
The elements. And so I just described that they're earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. And we're going to talk about that. And so a lot of different traditions talk about the elements differently. And again, your magic is your own. Use the symbolism that makes sense to you. So, you can learn what other people thought and what the correspondences are that are generally agreed upon in whatever society you're in, whatever group you're in. But I think the most important question is, what does this element symbolize for me? And I think about someone that you've known for 20 years, right? You couldn't explain who they are. You couldn't summarize them in just a single word because you've learned a lot about them over time. And so your experiences deepen your understanding. Now, you can develop a relationship in the same way with the elements. Like for the earth, for example, when you go on a walk, when you're in a garden or gardening, if you happen to be able to see the mountains in the distance, even things like baking bread, cooking things, because the food comes from the earth. And so what does it mean to you? Maybe you are a gardener and that's how you connect to the earth. Maybe you use grounding in your practice as a way to sort of settle down, feel solid. And that's great too. So you can use all of the elements that way. And I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. And I think that, again, when you're thinking about what they mean to you, like, think about personally how you feel when you look at fire. Like, to me, fire says confidence, right? Like, fire is like, a lot of people say it's passion, but I think that there are other aspects to fire that seem more important to me. Now, water could be flexibility, or maybe it means more cleansing to you. Maybe you really like focus on that when you're taking a shower or a bath or going down to the lake or a river. And so maybe that's what it means to you. Air can also be cleansing. When the wind blows on me, I think about it like blowing all the emotional junk out of me. But it's also an openness, right? And it can be, joy and flightiness and a lot of different things. Now, spirit, I think, is really mystery, but that's just for me. You might think spirit is joy because you love connecting to your spirit or other spirits or just the idea of spirit. So yeah. Now I'm going to get into sort of meeting each of the elements. And when I think about earth, I think like the question to ask is, what can you build, right? Because earth is usually introduced as stability, which is great, but stability isn't stillness. Right? Mountains move over time. Forests change. Sometimes they change quickly, like a forest fire. Today, we're warned not to go outside here because we're getting the smoke from the Canadian wildfires, and it's like the air is dangerous levels of toxic stuff in there. So they're telling us not to go outside, and it looks really weird because it's like it looks like it's foggy, but then it's not. So anyway, other things change in nature as well, having to do with earth, like seeds split open before they grow. And so to me, what that teaches us is sort of a patient transformation, right? Because those things happen really slowly and you don't notice. But earth also teaches us that when things are built one small action at a time, they usually last, right? When you're intentional about it. So what does earth ask of us? Well, earth asks what gives your life structure and what nourishes you, right? What routines actually support your life? Like, how are you building your life through routine? What are you cultivating, maybe? And that can be symbolic, that can be metaphoric, or it can be real. Like, I cultivate herbs. I don't do very well with tomatoes. I try every year, and I typically spend like $20 to get 4 tomatoes by the end of the year, but I keep trying. I can't help it. So, and also, what deserves your patience, right? What do you let into your life that, that you shouldn't, that is not serving a life that you want to build? Okay, so how can you bring earth, how can you notice earth in everyday life? Well, it could be paying your bills, right? Because that is building a solid life, right? It could be, fixing something that's broken, a loose hinge on a cabinet. It could be cooking dinner, because that, again, is security. It could be caring for your body. And so all of those things, to me, says those are, you're putting energy into the things that build a good life. So that's earth. Now, moving on to air, I think that air is about noticing, right? And when we think about the elements, like we're all off doing our thing, living our life, and like you don't often, like sometimes you don't notice things, but then like a breeze hits you, right? And you're like, oh, that's nice, right? And you stop and you connect with the world around you that way. Now, air is about movement, and it can be mental movement, it can be having ideas, asking questions, telling your stories, and even like when you think about telling a story and the breath is coming out of you. Oh, thanks. So it can be just curiosity, like you are looking at the world and just like moving your opinions. Now, I think that air to me says it's about possibilities, right? It's not a certainty. You never know when the wind is going to whip up. You never know when the clouds are going to blow in, right? But I think that that's, a beautiful way to look at possibility and helps keep us open to when change and movement happens in our life. So what does air ask of us? Well, it asks what assumptions that you're making. Where are you stuck and not freely moving around, freely changing? What haven't you considered when you're thinking about what it is that you want to do with your life? And so where the earth is very stable and solid, air is, it's really movement. Maybe it asks what conversations you need to have if you're avoiding difficult conversations or even great conversations, right? It's like we forget to say, hey, I really appreciate you. And I love hanging out with you, and I love you, and all of these kinds of things. I had a friend once tell me that the two most underused phrases in the English language are I'm sorry and thank you. And I thought that was really interesting. Yeah. And it's just like we should think about that. We should think about using those phrases because sometimes we just feel like, oh, they know, right? So anyway, and I suppose I would include I love you in that too, because I think people get out of the habit of telling the people they love that they do love them. Errol also asks you what stories you're telling about yourself, about what you can and can't do. And so with the idea of movement and change, that really helps to say, hey, am I telling myself something that is really not true and it's keeping me stuck? So in everyday life, where can you notice air? Well, listening, changing your mind, following your curiosity, breathing deeply, doing breath work and breathing exercises. And those are all kind of expressions of air. And, maybe ask yourself, where can curiosity replace certainty? So, onto fire. Now, fire to me says what deserves your energy, right? Because that is the nature of fire. It's taking the energy from the air and from the wood, and it's consuming them. It's transforming them. And a lot of times, people look to fire to be like passion, right? Because it dances around, it moves. But I think that fire in a lot of ways is about transformation. And as fire consumes, it's like really like it turns to ash. And so in the end, it no longer serves the fire, right? And so you have to think about that, like what can you consume or get rid of in a way that serves you best, right? And fire also illuminates, right? It illuminates what matters. So when you think about using fire energy, think about what it is lighting up for you and what you can see that you couldn't before. What can you do in your everyday life? Well, you can light a candle, or you can light a fire. You can start a difficult conversation, right? Because that's going to transform. You can stand up for yourself, right? Because fire is powerful and fire is alive. You can celebrate your successes, or you can just stare into the flame if you want to do that. And I think the real reflection here is, where do you want your energy to flow, right? Where do you want that energy? Where do you want to be putting your energy? Okay, water. And I always think that water has a lot to do with feelings. And water is adaptive. Water flows. Water, it also is a transformative thing too. Like flowing water will erode, stone over time. It changes, it moves. And so I think that water reminds me that emotions aren't problems to solve, right? It's like it's a very slow kind of element, much like Earth, because things change, but they change slowly over time. And so I think that when you want to use water as symbolism, use it in the idea of like, what are you feeling and what can be changed? So I can feel like the things like happiness and joy that I want to be feeling long term. You're going to get sad sometimes, of course, because sometimes things happen that are not great. But if you want an overall joyous life, see what it is that if something is stopping you from that. So yeah, what can you do in everyday life once you've asked yourself what needs to change? Like you can say, hey, what am I forcing in my life instead of letting it flow? Because, water is, like I said, adaptive and it moves around things. It doesn't stop because there's a stone, it just moves around it and keeps going. You can watch the rain, you can take a shower or a bath and think about what that means to you, if it means cleansing or if it means I'm going to change something. I don't know why I'm so far over on the screen. But, even like drinking water, drinking tea in a ritual, sitting by the lake or a river or whatever body of water and just using it to contemplate. So on to the final one. And spirit is a harder one to talk about what it really is, because it's not a physical thing like the other elements are. So when I think of spirit, I think about meaning, and I think about what gives my life meaning. And I think that spirit is connection. It's about being connected to something larger than ourselves. And it's about being present and letting our spirit connect with other people's spirits or actual spirits, if you believe in that. But it really is, I think, about that connection to the things around us, the people around us, and the world around us. So ask yourself, I guess, what fills you with awe and what feels sacred and where do you want to connect and what appears in your life. I think that it's also useful to say, what are my stories with spirit as well? And say, what keeps unfolding? How is my story unfolding? And what am I becoming? And am I bringing spirit to the world in a way that is useful? Because I think every time we improve ourselves and we notice our magic, that we're making the collective better. And I think that it's a responsibility for us to make the collective better. That's like one of our jobs in being alive here and now. And so every time that we pay attention to those kinds of things, we're doing what we're supposed to. We're making the world a better place. And the world needs a lot of help right now. So keep doing your thing.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, I do. I think it is more than just this is a nice thought. I think it is a responsibility that we have here as human beings. So in everyday life, what can you do? Well, you can watch the stars, right? I mean, I live outside of a city, so I don't see a lot of stars. And man, it's amazing when you go out in the country somewhere where there isn't a bunch of, light noise around you. And it's like I get that, like, wow, you know? And we forget about that. The sun comes up every day, but man, it is so amazing to go see a sunrise and say, it's so much beauty there. And lately we've been getting northern lights, and people, oh yeah, it's been amazing. And like, I don't even remember that in my lifetime, having northern lights here in northern Illinois. But it's like people just stopping their lives and going down to the beach, and because there's less light over by the beach, and it's like, it's just because it's unusual. If it happened every day, people would stop seeing it, right? I remember I went to South Africa for a job, and I was there for a couple of months, and my hotel was at the base of Table Mountain, right? And for the first couple of weeks, every time I left my hotel room, opened my door, there was the mountain. And I live in the flatlands, right? So I have to fly somewhere to see a mountain. But it was like, oh my God, that is the most amazing thing. And I went up to the top of it and all of that. And then I realized after a couple more weeks, I stopped looking, and it was just because it was always there. It was, and so I thought to myself, you notice every single day. And I made it a little ritual to stop as I was leaving my room and be like, that's a mountain right there. It's a mile straight up. It was really cool. So anyway, other things that you might connect to spirit with, listening to music, feeling sort of that wonderful feeling of awe in beautiful music, or angry music, if that's what you like. I don't know your life, you do you. Even lighting a candle, I think, even though that is fire, I still think, when I look into a candle or I stare and make a fire out in the fire pit, man, I could just sit there for hours, just looking at the dancing and the shapes and everything. You can go hug a tree, because trees are amazing. And trees are really good for us. In general, being in nature is really good for us because it helps sort of lower our vibration. And I've definitely talked about that before, but we do get our vibration raises up using electronics, which we do all the time. So, and even just noticing something beautiful, even if it's a flower in a crack in the sidewalk, or the beauty of what people call weeds, which are really resilient, hardy, local plants, and just noticing how cool it is and how strong they are and how tough they are, right? And so connecting to the spirit of those things. So a lot of people talk about oh, you're a fire person, or you're a water person. They do it with astrology, and it's oh, I'm Cancer, so I'm a water person. And that's just, again, everything is made up. And so if that doesn't resonate with you, that's fine. It's my questions would be more how do you naturally embody Earth? How do you connect to the Earth side of you? When do you need the air element? How can water help? So those are the kinds of questions. It's about recognizing how you connect to each of them, not picking one that is you, because we need all of them. And so if you want to be intentional about what you're doing, here are some simple practices that you can do daily. So with Earth, it's obviously, gardening, cooking, walking, even organizing things, working with your hands. With air, you could start journaling. You could read. You could have conversations, right? It's about that connecting. And as I said earlier, you can do breath work, and it can be as simple as, count to 4 breathing in and 6 breathing out, and any one of those kinds of exercises. Because it's funny, a while back, because of my chemical sensitivities, I started getting high blood pressure. And one of the things that the doctor prescribed for me was this machine that it would like log how fast you were breathing, right? And then it would give you a tone that matched your breath. And it had one tone for in, another one for out, and it matched your breath. And over the course of 10 minutes, the tones got longer and longer. And so it like slowed down your breathing. And that was literally one of the things she prescribed for me to lower blood pressure. Yeah. So you can't underestimate how important like slowing down your breathing, paying attention to your breathing, because I know a lot of people, especially when they're nervous, they have very shallow breathing. And, part of what breathing is for is it eliminates toxins. So that part of air, I read somewhere that the whole, the reason that you need to breathe again, you can't hold your breath for 5 minutes or whatever, is not because you need a breath in. It's because you need to get out those toxins that are building up inside the air in your lungs. And that's why you desperately need to breathe out. Yeah. So.
And when we breathe really fast too, that our nervous system then assumes that there's something to be, scared about, and it will panic. So, and I do it all the time, that I forget to take deep breaths, and then I'll intentionally take one, and it feels so good, and I'm like, why? I need to do more of that, because it's crazy, the power of the breath.
Yeah. And again, with my chemical sensitivities, part of what would happen is I'd get very inflamed, and my lungs would get inflamed as well. And it would feel like when I breathe in, there'd be like a shelf halfway through it would be like, and I couldn't breathe in any deeper. And I found that walking helped me, because it was like, as I was, and I'm a pretty quick walker. I'm a city walker. But it was just like, for whatever, it like opened up my airways, and that definitely reduced anxiety for me. So other everyday things for fire, we talked about candles. Creative work, I think, is something that is really embodying fire. Celebration, even just getting some sunlight. I live in a place where it's winter for like 7 months out of the year. And
Same.
And so, people in where I am are, chronically low on vitamin D. And so I try and get out every day, even when it's hot, for a little bit. I am not a cold weather person. I'm fine with the heat. I am not good with the cold. So, but yeah, it's like remembering to get out there and appreciate the sun. And even if you want to do something like a sun salutation, I think that's pretty cool that people have that practice. Now with water, you can do a tea ritual, which is always fun. If you don't have that kind of time, you can, take a shower, take a bath, go to the river, like I said earlier. You can do one of my favorite things is go dance in the rain. And of course, I only do it when it's warm out, because nobody wants to go out in cold rain. But it's so fun. And I really like to reinforce my neighbor's belief that I am, in fact, insane.
I love that.
You got to keep up with that, or they forget and then start thinking you're all normal. So for spirit, you can meditate. You can pray if that's your deal. You can have a ritual. Again, appreciate wonder. Go out there and seek out things that help you remember what it feels like to feel wonder. you can be silent and connect. You can connect to the earth around you. You can practice gratitude. And so I think all of those things embody spirit. Soph, do you have any questions or?
There was something that you posted the other day, and I think it was something around it not needing to balance the emotion, the elements, but noticing what you need on each day. And I found that really, like, because everyone talks about, how can you get enough of this and enough of that? And I was like, there are definitely days where earth is one that I really have to consciously connect to. I think there's certain, like the fire and the spirit, I probably gravitate to naturally, but earth is something that I have to consciously do and go and ground and spend that time outside. But yeah, just noticing, what do I need today? And I thought that was really really profound way of looking at it. And yeah, I really loved that. But yeah, I definitely think water, fire, spirit are like my go-tos, and maybe and yeah, air and earth I have to maybe consciously connect with more.
Yeah, it's interesting. I said earlier I'm a Cancer, and so I'm supposed to be a water spirit. I think part of the reason that it doesn't hit really hard with me is because when I was 14, I went to visit my cousins on Long Island, and I had only ever been to Lake Michigan, and which is basically like a big inland sea. So there are waves and stuff, and people surf, but nothing like the ocean. And I had no idea. Like, I just thought it was going to be like Lake Michigan, and I got caught in the undertow. And so, and I didn't know what to do. And all my friends were on the beach, and the waves kept crashing over my head, and I have to hold my breath and breathe when it wasn't crashing over my head. And I eventually got back, and I think I was 14 at the time. Yeah, I was 14. And I was just like a 14-year-old. So I was embarrassed. So I never said anything. And it was just it was awful. So I was terrified of having my head go under the water. And, I had to take swimming in school. It was awful. But yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I feel a little bit of distance. Now, I want to thank you for setting me up. I did not pay Soph to do this. But I was going to suggest that for the next week or so, keep an element journal and just write the 5 elements down and say, how did I connect with this element today? Or did I connect with this element today? And sort of track it so you can pay it. It helps you pay attention, for one thing. And because you want to stop and notice, because you're like, oh, I want to know how I'm connecting to water today. And maybe it's something as simple as, I put out offerings to the goddess and god that I'm currently working with, and I put out water every day. And so, and I think about water, and I think about why I'm making an offering. So it can be really easy, or you can just think about whatever you connect with when you're taking a shower or taking a walk. Or even if you grow herbs in a pot on your deck or your porch, touch the dirt. Dirt is good for us. It's got microbes that we need, and I think that people forget about getting their feet in the dirt or the sand. And it was fun. I had a friend come visit from Denver a while back, and she wanted to go to the beach, but it was January and it was really cold out. And I was like, okay, you want to see the beach? We'll see the beach. And she was so unhappy about the fact that the sand was hard, and she couldn't feel and it's what do you think's gonna happen? It's there's water.
I have we have artificial grass in our garden here, and although it's convenient, I really miss having that, because it doesn't get cold, like real grass gets really cold and go out in the morning and it's freezing. That doesn't really happen, doesn't get the dew on there. But luckily we have a park up the road where I can go and be on the grass. And I always try, and my kids are always barefoot outside, and my nan is always like, get some shoes on them, kids, and I'm like, they're fine.
Yeah, that's good. I only have grass on the parkway because the city requires me to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I've got ground cover on on this side of the sidewalk, but in the back, I had 3 very large dogs for 15 years. And within I got one and had him for 2 years, and that was fine. But then when I got the other 2, and within a couple of months, the entire backyard, they'd go running out there, and the entire backyard was just like a big pit of mud.
Yeah.
And so I ended up, and it flooded. My yard floods because there's a little underground river that's nearby. And, well, stream, it's not a river. But I decided I was going to fill the whole yard with river rock and just put stepping stones out. And that worked amazingly well. The dogs were fine with it because it was just tiny little rocks. But it was also, it's great because I put about 4 inches out there. And so now when my yard floods, I don't know it. I'm above it. So I would not do well with artificial grass. It would
Yeah. That was the reason we did do it, because the dogs were bringing all the mud in the winter. But yeah, no, I do miss that. But I'd make sure I try and plant some little, I'm the same as you. I've tried to grow fruit and veg, and it's just I get 3 tomatoes, so you do better than me. You get 4, but yeah, I'm not very green fingered or whatever it is that they say. So I'll stick a couple of plants in a pot. But yeah, I'm lucky we've got a nice little area where we can go and sit and be in the trees. So
yeah, my yard is almost all shade because there's big trees here because this is an older community. But I've got 3 massive planter boxes that sort of are along my deck. That's the wall for the deck instead of having a railing. And I do really well with herbs. I've got so many herbs. I've got so much sage. I've got so many sage bundles that I've made. But yeah, the veggies just, I tried cucumbers, and there's not enough light to keep that mold that forms on those big leaves.
Yeah,
So
my mum has an allotment, and it flooded last year. Everything flooded and got ruined apart from, she was growing loofahs, the what you can yeah, and she had, I'm not joking, hundreds of these loofahs. I said, what are you gonna do with all of these? And she's like, oh, I might start selling them. She didn't, and I don't even know what she did with them in the end, but it just really made me laugh. Out of all of the things that survived, is it these bloody loofahs?
yeah, I didn't know people grew those themselves.
No, I didn't until that time. Yeah. It was such a funny word as well.
Yeah, it definitely is. And it seems like they should be some sort of skeleton of a sea creature.
Yeah, that's what I thought they were. Like sea sponge that you can buy. I thought it was dried up coral. So I don't know what I thought it was, but I didn't know it grew on trees. So
yeah, I think I learned about that from Facebook video, just doom scrolling, but then so.
Yeah, no, that was really, I like the idea of keeping a diary, because I think there's some days where I go and probably I don't really connect to earth, and sometimes, like you said, but just becoming aware of it, right? Especially in the winter, I know I'm really not great at getting out in nature. I don't love cooking, which is a shame, but so creative, hands-on, crafty stuff I do tend to do. So I like the idea of just starting that diary and becoming more aware, maybe noticing my moods for that day and see if I can notice like a pattern with, you know, with days where I'm connecting with more water. Is my mood better? Am I calmer? And that sounds good.
That's a great idea to capture sort of how you're feeling, like generally on that day, or even like in that moment where, you know, like I've got an arboretum across the street from me basically, and there is a canal that flows through there. And so it's like I forget to go look at it. And it's beautiful. It's fenced off, so you can't like get down to it. So there isn't garbage in there. There isn't like any of the stuff that people, the bad stuff people would bring with them. And so it's gorgeous. And I know that people like kayak or canoe like down there. And I was like, wow, why don't I do that? You know, like why am I not out there on the water? This one is private, but there is one that's public that's like a 15-minute drive away. Then you just go rent yourself a kayak. I never do a canoe. I only do a kayak. It feels so much more stable. And I'm still a little bit freaky around the water. But yeah, there's so many ways to connect if you're looking for them. And that's getting back to magic. Like that magic starts with noticing what's around you. And, you know, if you hear like a bird singing, and that connects you to air, that's great, you know? Or if you want to have a bird bath, you know, again, I don't know your life. Maybe you don't have room for that. But just think about the ways that the elements affect you, the ways they connect with you. And I think that it's a really good basic building block for a spiritual practice, because those things make up the world and they make up us. And they, you know, they feed us, they nourish us, they, you know, keep us from dying of thirst and like all of those things. And it's just, that's what I'm looking right now. The reason I'm saying this is because I want to do a series on the basics. And this is kind of where I thought I should start. So I've been doing some fun tutorials and stuff, but what I want now is to really help people on a path and help them move forward. So that's where I'm going with it. And again, I've dropped the link in the chat. So if you want to come over and have conversations and not just watch tutorials, then please do join me and we can talk about magic. So thanks so for being here. I appreciate it.
I loved it. Thank you so much. See you soon. Bye. Bye.